good afternoon, everyone, or morning, wherever you happen to be. Um, I'm just going to give you a little bit of oversight just across a couple of slides around the school context survey. Essentially, the main purpose of this was to provide some additional information or additional context about the environment in which these students are learning, that particularly where we thought with questions we thought that the students would be less able to answer accurately or objectively. So I'll talk about who answered the survey in future in a couple of slides time, but really we want to explore aspects of the educational settings that these students were in. So the next slide then just gives an overview of the kinds of content that we were asking in this survey. So broadly, I've structured this down to three areas: transition, so pathways, future pathways, support and guidance, teaching and curriculum approaches of the school itself, and then other support and resources, which had a COVID flavour to it, as we all know the context of when we were collecting this data. So in terms of the transitions and support, we were really interested in understanding from schools themselves what levels of engagement they had with tertiary education providers for both general further study options, but also for specific programs and engagement that they were having. So we've asked our schools to indicate who they have been interacting with and some information about the programs that they have been interacting about, with a particular focus around tailored equity type of projects and programs, as Andrew was talking about the context earlier. We've also asked them about engagement with other organisations, especially from that equity perspective and the widening participation perspective. So other non-university or non-education providers that may be supporting their senior students in terms of their transitions and support. We'd asked about internal resources around careers education and careers guidance, and other sorts of supports for transition to further studies that they were offering within their schools, or that they were saying were available to students. From a teaching and curriculum approach, we didn't ask a whole lot of schools around this, but we sort of, our questions were focused around two areas. One was about streaming, and I put that in inverted commas because we know it's a loaded term, streaming, but we were interested in the policies that schools had around how they structure their classes, especially in that Year 10 range, and their approaches to that and their rationale for that. So you'll see there are some interesting options and things that came out of that. We also wanted to know about the opportunities for vocational education and training for students within their cohorts. We know there are lots of different models in which VET is operated and offered within schools, and so we have some information in there about whether VET opportunities were available, and then who was providing those VET opportunities and where those opportunities were provided. So some in schools, some out of schools, etc. And the last part, or the other aspect of the survey, was around other support and resources. So as we know, a lot of this was last year. A lot of these schools were battling with COVID issues at the time, and also had come out of the year before where there were significant lockdowns across the country. So we're asking about specific resources that they had been able to provide to their students for home learning, around technology and around, well, basically around technology, but other aspects. And we also are asking around specific COVID-related funding, tutor initiatives. Victoria and New South Wales had particular targeted funding around tutors and other catch-up kind of initiatives which they were running last year. So we were asking specifically in those states about those programs. And there's also there are also a number of questions that go into other kinds of support. And I've listed some examples there: psychological, financial, language, and disability support. All of these things are are captured in there. The last slide, I just wanted to talk about how we did this and who was answering these questions. So as Ben has talked about, we facilitated the survey with students was administered through participating schools. Each school had a nominated school coordinator who was not only responsible for implementing and helping to implement the student survey for students, but was also responsible for coordinating the completion of the school context survey. The questions in the school context surveys, as you would have got a flavour for before, could potentially cover a lot of different or a number of different people within the school. So we made it very clear and possible for people within schools for more than one person to contribute to the survey. So school coordinators were able to send this to different people across the school to be able to answer different aspects of the questions, so that we got as accurate a picture as we could get from across the school. And the last part just gives you an indication of the types of people who were completing the survey within schools. And this is sort of, this is ordered from the most common to then going down. But you can see that really a large number were around the careers counsellors and the head of the year levels, and then others were also involved. Thanks, Ben.